The man stood motionless in the cold swamp, knee-deep in water, his limbs scraped and his eyes vacant. Surrounded by desolate woods, far from paved roads, far from the world that people thought was safe. Just hours before, he had been sitting with the victim's family, chatting, laughing as he always did. A close friend, a familiar face, a regular houseguest. The police found no signs of forced entry. No screams, no struggles, no one in the house had heard anything that night. The only thing missing from the house, a 5-year-old child. And as they followed every footprint, every phone call, every broken word, they found more than just a truth. They found a hidden past, a darkness that had been brewing quietly, and a community forced to confront what no one wanted to believe. Evil does not always have a stranger's face. Watkins, Minnesota, a small town in the Midwest, where time moves slowly and everyone knows each other by name. There are no major highways, no skyscrapers, just white picket fences, green fields, and wooden houses close enough to hear the dog barking next door. In the summer of 2016, Watkins had just experienced a violent tornado. Roofs were blown off houses, trees were toppled, and local businesses were badly damaged. But the thing about this place, people did not give up. Within days, groups of residents began cleaning up, working together to rebuild roofs, sweeping away debris as if it were a normal part of life. In that atmosphere of solidarity, there was a small, lively 5-year-old girl named Alayna Ertl. Cute, mischievous, and always smiling. She was known as the town's little bean, not just for her small stature, but for her sweet and affectionate personality. Alayna loved the things kids loved: princess dresses, dolls, purple and pink. But she also loved climbing, playing in the mud, helping her father fix the tin roof. A fearless child, a pure soul, her mother Kayla once said, anyone who met her even once would remember. If she missed a day of school, the whole class would feel empty. The Ertls lived a simple, almost exemplary life. Dad Matt was a sports fanatic, playing softball in the evenings with friends. Mom Kayla took care of the 2 children. And Alayna, the youngest, was always the center of every moment. On August 19, as usual, Matt played ball with the team, then went to a local bar with his best friend, Zachary Anderson, to unwind after the game. The two were longtime teammates, regulars in sports, and close friends in real life. Zach was no stranger to the Ertls. In fact, he often stayed over after late nights out. That night, Matt came home around 2:30 a.m. Zach arrived later, closer to 4 a.m. Kayla, as always, picked up Alayna, who was fast asleep, from the living room, tucked her into bed, and covered her with Elsa's blanket. A simple, familiar gesture with no indication that it would be the last. The next morning at 8:30 a.m., the family woke up. Alayna was no longer in the bedroom, not in the living room, not in the backyard, nowhere. And then they realized Matt's work truck was gone, his phone was gone, and Zachary wasn't in the house either. In that moment, any parent's heart would stop. No more vague panic, it was sheer fear. 9:56 a.m. The first call to the police was made. By 1:12 p.m., the Amber Alert was issued statewide. Alayna's picture was all over the news. The person who had once been known as the pretty girl from Watkins was now the focus of a statewide manhunt. And at that moment, everyone in this small town knew the unthinkable had just happened. When a child goes missing, every minute is like a rope tightening around hope. With each passing hour, the odds of finding her alive grew slimmer. And on the morning of August 20, 2016, time became the Watkins community's greatest enemy. The Amber Alert went out. Alayna's picture appeared on phones, on television, on social media. A 5-year-old girl, brown hair, rosy cheeks, mischievous eyes. People looked at the photo and could not believe that the little girl, the child they had seen playing in the schoolyard greeting adults as they walked down the street, was out there somewhere, dead or alive, unknown. As the media covered the story, investigators from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA, and local police began to sift through clues. And the first clue came from the phone signal itself, Matt's iPhone that Zachary had taken with him. The phone had pinged at 6:30 8:30 a.m. in Todd County, about 60 miles north of Watkins, according to the carrier. Then one last pinch at 9 a.m. After that, the device disappeared from the system entirely. In that moment, investigators knew Zachary was no longer wandering aimlessly. He was trying to hide. And more importantly, he knew he was being sought. Zachary was caught on security cameras at a convenience store near Browerville at 8:30 a.m. alone, without Alayna, buying some groceries, not in a hurry, not acting strangely. But to investigators, it was that unusually normal that was most suspicious. When they reviewed the contact history, a name popped up. Zachary's father. He had received a brief call from his son that morning, asking permission to stay at the family cabin outside Motley, about 90 miles from Watkins near Wilderness Park, a remote, sparsely populated area surrounded by woods and swamps. He immediately called the police. "You can come, I authorize a search." The rapid response team was dispatched immediately. In their minds, there was only one question: would they make it in time? As the police car turned onto the dirt road leading to the cabin, the air was heavy. They were entering the unknown. There were no people, no cell phone reception, just the woods, the wind, and their professional instincts to guide them. The missing truck, Matt's GMC Sierra, was the first to be found. It was deep in a low canyon near the edge of the woods, as if someone had deliberately hidden it from view. The doors were unlocked. No phone, no blood, no disturbance. The cabin was deserted, but inside they found a gun, a few bullets, and a bloody piece of paper in the corner. Nothing obvious, but the way it was placed in the middle of the table sent shivers down their spines. Zachary wasn't there. Nor was Alayna. They decided to extend their search into the woods behind the cabin, where there were no trails, just thick brush and mud. A K-9 team was deployed, and the police dog Yankee, led by Deputy Sheriff William Connor, quickly picked up the scent. Yankee hissed, pulling hard toward the south swamp. Connor followed, step by step, sinking deeper into the mud. The cold wind blew, carrying moisture and the smell of rotting trees. Then they saw him, Zachary Anderson, standing still, almost frozen in the mud, his hands scraped, his eyes red but not shedding tears, not struggling, not running. As if he had been waiting for them. "Where is the girl?" Which girl?" "Stop lying, we just want to get her back to her parents." "I don't know anything." The silence stretched, no one moved. Connor stepped closer, one last time. "Where is she? Is she here?" Zachary looked down at his feet and said softly, "In the swamp." A few minutes later, under the mud and rotting branches, they found Alayna's body. There was no sign of life. Only the golden light of the late afternoon filtered through the canopy, falling on a frozen patch of forest. A few dozen meters away, they found the blue Elsa blanket, the one Kayla had covered her daughter with the night before. At that moment, no one could hold back their tears. There was no gunshot, no chase, no bloody horror, but everyone knew something terrible had happened here. At 6:02 p.m., Sheriff Brian Cruz called the station. "Amber Alert canceled." No one in town wanted to hear that, because everyone knew what it meant. Part 3, cracks beneath the surface. After all, the question remained, hanging in the air like something no one dared to say out loud. Why? Well, how could someone like Zachary Anderson, a close friend who had dined with the family and played with the little girl, have done it? What had turned an ordinary evening into an irreparable tragedy? And most of all, how could one recognize evil when it was disguised as friendliness? No one had a clear answer. No motive, no momentary anger, no personal conflict. To the outside world, Zachary was a nice young man. No felony convictions, athletics, regular work, a mostly normal life. But perhaps that was the scariest thing. The investigation shifted from tracing to clarifying the behavior and prosecuting criminally. Immediately, the results of the scene examination and forensic examination showed that the severity far exceeded. Predicted, the police confirmed that there was physical and mental violence. The marks left on Alayna's body made anyone who read the report choke up. Zachary was taken into custody, facing a series of charges including second-degree murder, kidnapping of a child to commit a serious crime, violent acts against the dignity of the victim. Bail was set, $1 million with conditions or $2 million without, a number that clearly showed the seriousness of the case. On the news, people began to call him by angry phrases. But in Watkins, that was not easy, because people had believed him. Some had even defended Zachary from baseless gossip in the past. But then that past appeared like ghosts that could not be buried. A forgotten history. In May 2006, Zachary was 16 years old, living with his mother in a quiet residential area in Wright County. Their neighbor was a 31-year-old single mother of two. At first, the teenager would leave notes on her car windows. Cute schoolboy notes telling her she was beautiful, telling her to call him if she wanted a boyfriend. It seemed harmless. But the woman felt uncomfortable, especially when she began to suspect that he had been stealing things from her house. The tipping point came one December night at 1:30 a.m. when she was awakened by a loud banging on the door. Zachary, clad only in his underwear, was standing at the door demanding to let me in. When she refused, he tried to push the door open until her boyfriend showed up. Zach ran away. It seemed like the end. But half a year later, while the family was asleep, Zachary snuck in through a downstairs window, stole a cell phone, and disappeared. This time, he was arrested and charged with trespassing and theft. The court found Zachary guilty of degree criminal mischief, ordering him to do community service and write a letter of apology. Because he was a minor, the information was never made public. The woman moved out of fear. Back to the present. When Alayna's case came to light, the woman learned about it in the newspaper. "I felt sick," she said. "I never thought it would turn out like this." She doesn't blame others for not listening to her. But she hopes that by sharing, others who had been approached by Zachary will have the courage to speak up. However, the legal system still has to follow its procedures. Throughout the investigation, Zachary repeatedly refused to answer questions. When he was arrested, he made it clear, "I don't want to talk. I exercised my right to remain silent." But the investigators continued to question him, trying to get a confession out of him. And that's where the legal story began to take a turn. The debate over human rights and evidence. Zachary's defense attorney argued that the investigators had violated his Fifth Amendment right to not be forced to incriminate himself. They asked the court to exclude everything Zachary said and did after he exercised his right to remain silent, including his admission that she was in the swamp and his actions leading to the body. Surprisingly, the judge agreed in part. The words and actions that led to the location of the body were not admissible as evidence. It was a shock. But fortunately, the physical evidence, the body, location, clothing, bedding, was independently discovered by the K-9 team, which was perfectly legal. In the end, the case was strong enough to go to trial. Zachary initially pleaded not guilty. But just before his trial, he unexpectedly pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated battery. All 18 other charges were dropped, but the price he paid was life in prison, no parole, no commutation, no way out. There was no lengthy trial, no acrimonious public debate. The case ended with a guilty plea. But for Alayna's family and Watkins', it was never truly over. Because the loss lingers every time someone walks by a playground without a child. Every time a bright orange sunset reminds them of a spirit who once ran in the sun. Every time they see a familiar face, and suddenly they can't trust anyone anymore. A conviction may close a trial, but it can't heal a broken heart. The Ertls never really got over their loss. How does one get over the loss of a 5-year-old? How does one get used to the absence of laughter, the sound of footsteps running down the hallway? How does one forget the routine of putting the child to bed, covering him with his favorite Elsa blanket, and wishing him sweet dreams? The silence, after all, was the cruelest thing of all. But in the midst of that terrible void, they chose something that not everyone has the courage to choose. They choose love. Not by trying to forget, but by continuing to live with the memory, by turning that memory into action. Kayla, Alayna's mother, started a small charity program called Sharing Alayna's Love. Every gift, every bracelet, every piece of support for other children in the hospital or families in need carries the image of Alayna, the little girl who brought smiles everywhere she went. Kayla once said that every time she saw the sunset, she felt her daughter was still watching from somewhere. She didn't pray for the pain to go away, she just hoped it could turn into something better. And miraculously, it did. From the tragic incident, the small community of Watkins was transformed. People not only came to pay their respects, not only helped, they learned to protect each other better. Talks on sex education, risk warning, and child protection skills are held. They rebuild trust not with the old naivety, but with awareness, initiative, and solidarity. Near the swamp where Alayna was found, a wooden cross was erected. No sign, no description, just a silent symbol in the middle of nature. But anyone who passes by knows that is where the memory of an angel remains. And Alayna's story, please don't let it be just a file. Please don't let it become a number among countless tragedies. She is a reminder to us of trust, vigilance, and above all, the ability to turn loss into compassion. If you are a parent, listen to your children more. If you ever see something unusual, speak up. If you are a teacher, a social worker, a community worker, demand clearer measures to protect children. And if you are listening, please know that your attention was not in vain. Your sharing was not in vain. You cannot change what happened to Alayna, but you can absolutely change what happens to another child by caring a little more, speaking up a little sooner, and never pretending you don't see. It takes no more than one small act, one word, one sharing, one awareness to keep the light of a 5-year-old alive. Alayna Ertl is gone, but her love lives on. And as long as we remember, tell, act on her behalf, she is still here among us. If this story resonates with you, please share it. It's the simplest way to continue to love, continue to protect, and continue to protect, and continue to keep little hearts like Alayna safe in this world.